Hi, Alvin DeLeon here, and you are watching episode 68 of the 3-Minute Health Tip. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about the conflict active phase. In G&M, and with the knowledge of the second biological law, we understand that every biological program runs in two phases provided there's a resolution to the conflict. And so the first phase is what's known as the conflict active phase. We enter this conflict active phase immediately after we experience an unexpected event or a conflict shock. The moment we get that unexpected phone call, we get that unexpected email or unexpected comment or criticism or circumstance, we immediately enter the conflict active phase. Now, the conflict active phase is actually a prolonged sympathicotonic stress state. Now that means that we're going to be under a typical stress response based on our autonomic nervous system. We will have a slowing of digestion. So during the conflict active phase, oftentimes we don't get we don't have much of an appetite. We tend to lose weight. Your blood pressure will go up. You will also tend to have cold hands and cold feet, and maybe even have cold shivers and also cold sweats. We also have to keep in mind that in the conflict active phase, it affects the entire organism at the level of the psyche, the brain, and the organ. And so at the psyche level, when we're in the conflict active phase, we become compulsively preoccupied with that conflict. We can't get it out of our minds. I give that typical example of, going to work on Monday and then getting a memo that there's going to be a big meeting on Friday and 5 people are going to have to be let go in the office. Now that's going to be a shock to almost everybody that works in the company, and for the next 4 days until Friday comes around, they're potentially in the conflict active phase, which means they're going to have cold hands, cold feet, interrupted sleep, because their mind is going to be preoccupied about, what am I going to do if I lose my job? Which means they're going to wake up at 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning and they can't fall back asleep. But despite the preoccupation, in the conflict active phase, we actually have a lot of energy. And this is why a lot of times we miss the concept that, something is wrong, because even though we're not sleeping much, we don't have much of an appetite, we're getting a lot of things done during the conflict active phase. We talked about what happens at the psyche level. At the brain level, there's already going to be an impact somewhere in the brain that's known as a hammer focus. This sharp target ring configuration will be there, but again, there's no symptoms at the brain level. And at the organ level, depending on where that impact is, there's already going to be changes being initiated in the body to assist that person in dealing with that conflict. So extra cells may be formed somewhere in the body, or an ulceration might take place, or a functional loss might take place during the conflict active phase. But again, for about 70-80% of the time, we don't feel those changes in the conflict active phase, which is why we often miss it when we're in this state. One of the things that you have to look for when you're in the conflict active phase is really the cold hands, this not much of an appetite, this waking up in the middle of the night, can't fall back asleep, because our body generally wants to mobilize us to resolve the issue. Our body doesn't want to be in a conflict active state, in a stress state for very long. So it's telling you don't have time to sleep, you don't have time to eat. You've got to figure out how you're going to resolve or deal with this conflict if you lose your job, for example. Those of you that are practitioners, those of you that are learning more about G&M and how to apply it into your life, it's very important to recognize when you are in the conflict active phase or when your patients are in the conflict active phase. So the thing to do, the health tip here, is to downgrade or try to start resolving the conflict. And that's really what you need to do. Once you recognize that, I think I'm in the active phase, I'm feeling a little bit stressed, my hands have been cold lately, I'm getting these cold chills, not having much of an appetite. Okay, what's going on in my life lately that's been an unexpected stress for me? How can I downgrade it, put it in perspective, or resolve it right away? And that's really what you want to do when you recognize you're in the conflict active phase. I hope that health tip is valuable and that you can go and apply it in your life or in your practice right away. I want to thank you as always for your attention, and I'll see you at the next episode.